Hey there, thanks for tuning into Bricks. I'm Chris, and 2026 is Ninjago's 15-year anniversary. And so, a few weeks ago, I flew out to LEGO headquarters in Billund, Denmark to see a massive presentation on a ton of crazy new product announcements for next year. And while obviously I cannot talk about most of what I saw for a long time, and some of what I saw I can never talk about for months and months and months, there was one thing that LEGO did give us clearance to reveal, and a couple weeks ago, we revealed that there will be mystery minifigures to coincide with the release of Ninjago Legacy sets coming back next year. But here's the thing, we were not shown these anniversary figures. I am in the same boat as all of you, and honestly, I feel like that makes it a lot more fun because I'll be speculating alongside all of you as to what these minifigures could be. Now, I put out a video right during the announcement where I summed up my thoughts on what I thought the figures could be. There are 7 figures in total. There's one in the center with a conical hat, and then there are 6 figures surrounding that. And I think a lot of people's obvious immediate thought is that, oh, this is going to be the 6 Ninja and Wu in some form. And I thought that maybe that could be the case. We could get remakes of the pilot suits for the 6 Ninja and Wu, maybe with a logo of the 15th anniversary on the back like we got for Star Wars' 20th anniversary. Maybe we could get golden versions of the original Ninja in their pilot or season 1 outfits and Wu for the 15th anniversary, but honestly, I wasn't really sold on either of those two ideas, mostly because just 5 years ago in 2021, for Ninjago's 10th anniversary, we already got golden legacy anniversary figures of the Ninja and Wu, so I don't know if LEGO would do that again. And so the third idea I came up with in that video was that we were going to do something like LEGO Star Wars did for its 25th anniversary just last year and give us characters that we've been wanting to get as minifigures, but there hasn't really been a set where it makes sense to include them. Characters like Dr. Julian, or maybe even a more obscure character like Kataru, Akita's brother, Hailmar, the Guard, and Shintaro, all of these cool character designs we've seen in the show but never got in physical form. But then, I thought about it more, and after talking to friends about things, after hearing a lot of the community speculation and buzz, I came up with another idea. And honestly, I feel like this idea is almost certainly going to be what we will get. And I am so certain I wanted to make this follow-up video about my actual idea for the Legacy anniversary figures for Ninjago, because I would very much like to go back when the sets are revealed, pull up this video and either say, yes, I called it, I was so right, or it would be very embarrassing and say, wow, I was so certain I was right, and this is nothing at all what I figured it was going to be. So let's jump in right now to my thoughts on what I think the actual minifigures for Ninjago Legacy's anniversary will be. So as I mentioned, I initially had 3 ideas. Remakes of the 2011 suits with logos on the back for the 15th anniversary, golden versions of either the 2011 or season 1 suits with Wu, or the first Spinjitzu Master in the center, as well as being surrounded by 6 other characters that appeared in the show, but we never got in sets. And initially, I was very certain of this idea. This was also literally hours after the reveal. I had no time to really think about it and speculate, and the more I think about it, as cool as it would be for OG fans, for longtime fans to get these characters, I'm not super convinced if we will. And the reason is that obviously Ninjago has to appeal to young audiences, it has to appeal to kids, to fans, to people who might not be diehard fans of the show, and for Ninjago Legacy, I definitely feel like getting an anniversary figure of Dr. Julian, despite how cool that would be, might not really excite kids to get old man in white lab coat. You know, it's not quite as exciting as getting a golden version of Kai or Jay. And obviously, you could say, and I did say this in my initial video, that well, for the Star Wars anniversary last year, we got young Leia as an anniversary figure, and I don't really think many kids were like super hyped to get young Leia in minifigure form, but we still did. And I would say, yes, that makes sense, but Star Wars has always been more geared towards old-time collectors, adults, people who want to complete their collections of characters, and Ninjago has definitely skewed towards younger kids and exciting younger kids. And so the idea that I had was that if the figure in the center is the first Spinjitzu Master, which at this point I'm pretty sure it is, I think the other characters around him are actually older elemental masters. Now, there are two parts of this idea. I initially had one idea that I was super certain on, and I talked about it with friends in the Ninjago space. We kind of ideated back and forth, and then they came up with an even better idea that I think it's almost certainly going to be that second one. So I'm going to start with my first idea and then explain kind of how that evolves. So my initial idea is that this will be the first Spinjitzu master and 6 of the older elemental masters of fire, water, lightning, ice, earth, and life. And the reason for that is because this would allow us to get very cool elemental designs. Ninjago has always been about the elements. You would get visually interesting characters as the anniversary figures, but they're also characters that are desirable that people will want. Now I'm going to start with the ones that I think are almost certainly a lock, and then we'll get into more of like the murky territory as we go on. I think for Lightning, Liber, Jay's birth mother, is almost certainly a lock for the older elemental master of lightning. She is the only prior elemental master of lightning we've seen, and also I'm trying to think of this from a production standpoint. If they don't have the budget to make a ton of new molds, it's pretty easy to make a lot of these older elemental masters because they all use molds that do exist nowadays. Her hairpiece is still in production. It's a common hairpiece. You would get a really cool dark blue and blue kind of robe with the lightning on it. Obviously, they would do some redesign from the show, moving it into the sets, but I think Liber is almost a lock because it is very important to get that character. And also, it's cool to have some diversity between male and female characters, so Liber would be awesome. For Earth, I actually went with Lily. Now, we have seen 2 older elemental masters of Earth. There was one that fought in the Serpentine Wars that we were introduced to in the flashback for Season 4 Tournament of Elements. We saw an Earth elemental master actually turn against the Elemental Alliance and side with the Serpentine, which was a really cool concept because in the episode it was explained that Chen kind of manipulated and turned the elemental masters against each other. But then the same elemental master appeared on the good guy's side in Hands of Time in a flashback, and Tommy Andresen basically said, oh yeah, he was just hypnotized by Hypnobrai in that flashback, which is why he turned against them, which honestly is a lot less cool than Chen manipulating the elemental masters to fight each other. I thought that was such a cool concept that he was even doing that when he was young, but then it turns out the guy was just hypnotized. Anyway, I digress. We did see that older elemental master, but I actually think for Earth, we almost are a certain lock for Lily. Lily has been a character people have been wanting for a long time, and she's also a very important character in the lore of Ninjago. It also will give them a chance to really reimagine and reinterpret what their design for Lily could be. We saw in a flashback last season, there was a design for Lily who was kind of in a custom suit for her mech. We've also seen her in her white robes, kind of when she was laying in bed. In the comic that appeared in the European Ninjago magazines, which Tommy Andresen did canonize. Mostly those comics are not canon, but he did canonize that one. She wore a suit similar to the 2011 ninja suits, so that one could be canon. And then in the flashback scene for season 13, we also saw her wear a ninja outfit, but it was all blacked out, so we couldn't really see what type of armor she had. And so I really feel like this would allow LEGO to just do whatever they want for a design for Lily. That hairpiece is obviously in production. Again, you have an interesting ratio between male and female characters, and she is super important to Cole's journey and the reason why he became a hero. So I almost think certainly Lily and the old elemental master of lightning, those two are almost certainly going to be the anniversary figures for those 2 elements. Moving on to the next elements. For ice, I think it's a lock for the original elemental master of ice. He's a pretty interesting design. He's got a white beard, white hair. He definitely has a more interesting look to him, kind of like a snowy look with the snowflakes and the dark blue. So I certainly feel like the old elemental master of ice is definitely going to be that character we would get for this. There's never been another elemental master of ice shown, so it's an almost certain lock for that. But then things get a little bit tricky when we get into the other elements. So fire and water, obviously you would go to Ray and Maya as the old elemental masters of fire and water, but we already got them in Hands of Time. And while it would be cool to get them in these Serpentine War outfits, maybe get some printing on the side of Ray's arms for the armor, I don't really know if they would waste 2 anniversary slots on characters we've already gotten before. So honestly, I feel like for fire, this one is a little bit of a stretch, and I'm not super certain about it. But I do think that maybe there's a chance that the Elemental Master of Fire could be the old Elemental Master of Fire we saw in Ninjago Legends Monstrosity, the original pilot of that fire mech. And obviously, they were wearing Zark's hat, so they could obviously just reuse that. It was in black and white, so they could really reinterpret the color scheme for this character. Maybe he was wearing a dark red hat, or maybe it was dark brown. Who knows? It would be great to get a recolor of that hat. I think that'd be super cool, and get a whole different fire elemental design for that character. And I just think it would be a very interesting minifigure design as an anniversary figure. This one is probably one of the more shaky ones because Ninjago Legacy is supposed to celebrate Ninjago's past, and while these are the past Elemental Masters, this particular past Elemental Master of Fire was only just introduced in an online short last year, so I don't know if they would definitely produce this one. Maybe they could do Rey in the Serpentine War getup, but honestly, I kind of would prefer getting this because I feel like it'd be really cool to get this old Elemental Master of Fire as a character. Moving on from that though, what's left is water and life. And life is a big question mark. I have some theories, but water, I actually think that Naiad would be a great minifigure to get, especially in the form that she took before she merged with the ocean. Now, Naiad was shown with purple skin, similar to the Keepers of the Amulet in the flashback kind of hand-drawn animated sequence in Season 14 Seabound, and I feel like that would be such a cool minifigure design to get. She would have an Islander-type getup, she would look very visually different than the rest of the characters, and Naiad would be a really cool minifigure because obviously she was very important in those early battles, and she would go alongside the first Ninjutsu Master as well because they kind of teamed up to fight against Wojira in that early days of Ninjago. So my pick for water has got to be Naiad. They could try to do her in her water form, but it's basically just almost identical to the water version of Nia that we got in Season 14, so I think if they were to make her, it would be the version with the trident before she merged with the ocean, and I honestly think that's a more interesting design anyway than getting just another kind of transparent water minifigure that we already got with Energy Nia. And then that leaves Life. Now, Life is the interesting one, because as far as we know, in canon, Lloyd has been the only green ninja. There are no other green ninjas, there are no other past Elemental Masters of Life. He's kind of his own unique thing. It's a whole prophecy and a destiny sort of idea for him, the chosen one. But there has been a lot of really interesting fan theories that a character shown in a flashback in Dragon's Rising Season 2, Zarkar, was actually a previous Elemental Master of Life. And let me explain. Zarkar has green eyes, and look, a lot of characters could have green eyes. I'm not saying every character with green eyes was a Master of Life, but there's a lot of signs pointing to Zarkar being a powerful Elemental Master. When they're walking through the museum during the Tournament of the Sources, we see Zarkar's portrait as one of the previous winners of the Tournament of Sources. So we know that Zarkar was an Elemental Master, and he was powerful enough that at some point in his life, he won the Tournament of Sources. We also know that when he was captured by the Forbidden Five, they stated that he was a powerful warrior of the Tiger tribe. And also he is Raz's ancestor. The actual line of dialogue in Season 3, Part 2, I believe, Rontu confronts Raz, and she says something along the lines of like, wow, it's so disappointing to see a descendant of Zarkar fall so far, implying that Zarkar is some super mega powerful warrior who existed in years past. His eyes are green, he was an Elemental Master. Honestly, I feel like Season 4, which the writers have stated is going to delve into the origin and what Lloyd's powers actually mean, is going to reveal that Lloyd was not the first Green Ninja, and maybe there was a different Green Ninja, Elemental Master of Life, across many different realms. We know Zarkar is from the Wildness, kind of the realm of Chima, and I could totally see them pulling a crazy twist that Lloyd isn't the first Elemental Master of Life, and there have been other masters before him, and Zarkar is one of them. This minifigure would also be easy to produce because they could just use Lord Raz's head and change the printing, make the eyes green, change the printing on the forehead, and there you go, you've got Zarkar. So I think that separate from the anniversary minifigures, I'm very sold on the Zarkar was a previous Elemental Master of Life theory. A lot of people online on Twitter and Blue Sky also think this, so we'll have to wait and see for Season 4. Again, I have no inside information on this. This is pure speculation, but I really do think it'd be very, very cool to do a reveal that Zarkar was also an Elemental Master of Life. And so that's the lineup. The first Ninjutsu Master, Zarkar Naiad, the Monstrosity Elemental Master of Fire, Liber Master of Lightning, Lily Master of Earth, the Old Elemental Master of Ice, as well as, of course, who am I missing here? I think I said them all, right? Yeah, I've got them all. So those are the elemental masters that I think we are going to get. Now the thing is, I was going back and forth with friends about this in the Ninjago space, and actually an even better idea has presented itself. And I am so certain of this idea, I'm gonna bookmark this time in the video, and I'm very curious if I am correct on this, because if I'm correct, that would be absolutely crazy that I called every single anniversary figure. But let's see. I also would be very funny if I was completely off base and none of the ideas I've presented are right, and I think that would also be very funny to look back when the sets are revealed and see if I was correct. So here's my idea. When we were seeing the anniversary minifigure stand, there was a center minifigure with a conical hat, and the stand continued to have two minifigures alongside that character. And this was one piece. And then each of the other individual pieces were their own section. So you had two minifigures here, two minifigures on the other ends, and that brought us to 7. Now, I don't think there are going to be 7 legacy sets. I think 7 legacy sets is a lot to juggle on top of Dragons Rising Season 4 next year. I actually think there's going to be a little less. LEGO Harry Potter, for their anniversary, did something where for the Hogwarts Icon set, they included 3 anniversary minifigures in one set, and it was just like this. They had a center minifigure, they had 2 on the sides, and 3 figures were included in one set. And I actually think that that set will probably be a Ninjago City. I think it'd be crazy not to do a Ninjago City for the 15th anniversary. I almost would be certain that this would be Borg Tower. I think that would be very cool. I mentioned in a different video, it'd be very cool to get Ninjago City towers, to get Borg Tower and then other towers surrounding it, and that way you would kind of get around the issue of Borg Tower being a boring gray building. You would get other colorful towers surrounding it. I think that'd be super cool. I don't know if that's what it's going to be, but I do think we're going to get a city, a large legacy set with 3 anniversary minifigures in it. Now here's the thing. I said Zarkar was always a stretch for the Master of Life because that would be kind of a spoiler for Dragons Rising Season 4 if it even is true, and we don't even know if it's true, so there's a number of contingencies having to come true for that. And Water and Life were not from the first Spinjitzu Master. The first Spinjitzu Master has always been tied to fire, lightning, earth, and ice with the 4 golden weapons of creation, and those are the 4 original elements. But the 2 other minifigures deeply associated with the FSM are of course Wu and Garmadon. And Wu and Garmadon have been such important parts of Ninjago history, I feel like the anniversary figure lineup is actually the first Spinjitzu Master and young Wu and Garmadon using a look similar to their designs from the Spinjitzu Brothers books, which are very cool designs, and then you would get Fire, Lightning, Earth, and Ice as the old elemental masters. So you have the Monstrosity, Master of Fire, Liber, Master of Lightning, you'd have Lily, Master of Earth, and then the old elemental Master of Ice, but instead of having Naiad and Zarkar, you would have Wu and Garmadon. Now, here's the thing. Wu uses Lloyd's hairpiece, actually, in the Spinjitzu Brothers look, so all they need to do is recolor the headband. I think that'd be really cool to get as a piece. He also has a very interesting design with his logo there, and I'm sure they'd change it up for the sets. They're not going to do a one-to-one of Spinjitzu Brothers, but I think it would be pretty close to what we would see there. And then Garmadon uses the Cole hairpiece from the Ninjago movie, which, as we know, LEGO destroys molds after 5 years of them not being in use, and the last time we saw Cole's hairpiece from the movie was in The Island, which was in 2021, which means that in 2026, the mold is technically still around, so they could do young Garmadon using the Ninjago movie Cole's hairpiece. I think this would be very cool. The design for young Garmadon, at least the torso, is not super interesting. I would like them to do something a bit more interesting with him, but I do think that young Wu and Garmadon are almost certain for the other 2 anniversary figures, and it would make perfect sense to include them in a giant anniversary set with the FSM and Wu and Garmadon all included in one set. For Garmadon, they could also go in a different route, maybe do a version of the minifigure that we saw in the Shatterspin comics, or even in the Garmadon comics if they wanted to do something different. But given that they're celebrating the past of Ninjago, the legacy of Ninjago, old elemental masters make so much sense, and the young versions of Wu and Garmadon alongside the first Spinjitzu Master, I think is absolutely perfect. I am so certain of this. I've thought about this. I've talked about it with all my friends in the Ninjago world, and I think it would be totally awesome. And again, I have no inside information, literally none. I don't know, nobody has seen them except for the Ninjago team, so I am in the same boat as all of you. Again, I want to heavily stress I do not have insider information on this. I wanted to put out this video to speculate as a fan with all of you, because I think it would be crazy if it ended up being true, or if it ended up being false. It'd be very funny, but I really do think that for the anniversary, we're celebrating Ninjago's past. I think it'd be so cool to get the old Elemental Masters and young Wu and Garmadon and the first Ninjitsu Master. So those are my predictions for what the mystery anniversary figures are going to be. I'm very curious in the comments. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? What do you think the characters will be? Of course, you can check out my old video on the topic where I talked about my picks for other characters like a Full Metal Karloff, or some of the other characters we haven't really seen in physical form. Maybe we could get that, but no, I'm pretty convinced. I think it's the old Elemental Masters and Wu and Garmadon. I am also recording this video at the beginning of October, and I'm going to be very annoyed if rumors come out that either confirm or deny this, because I have a lot of videos that have to be published before this one. There's a lot of Lego Batman reveals that happened this week, and there's some other reveals that are happening. I guess by the time this video comes out, I can say it. The aquarium was just revealed, so I can't publish this video until at least a few days after like the actual embargo reveals happen. So I am praying there are no written leaks that come out between now and when this video is published that either confirm or deny my theories, because it would be very disappointing, because then people would say, oh, you just like read the leaks or something and then came up with this, or like, no, the leaks came out and you're totally wrong. Hopefully things won't leak, but these are my predictions. I'm very excited for next year's anniversary. I'm very curious to see what these figures are, so let me know in the comments, do you agree or disagree? What do you think the figures will be? And that about sums up this speculative video. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon. Thank you so much, and bye for now.